Welcome back to another episode of In Swine Versation. The production manager and veterinarian meet at the Maschhoffs, and the rest is history. Welcome, Dr. Rachel Schulte and Kyle Schulte.
Hi, Jim, and thanks for inviting us.
Let's get right to it, Kyle. You're currently a production manager at Applewood Farms. Can you give me your background, please?
You bet. I guess I'll just kind of start back at my childhood. I was raised on a crop and livestock farm in East Central Iowa. Norway, Iowa is my hometown. Very well known for baseball, if you follow that closely in the United States. I was very active in the 4-H and FFA organizations as a kid. Played some sports, was involved in showing livestock, and just had a great childhood. My parents are wonderful people. They still farm at the family farm today. Eventually, I decided to go to Iowa State University, and I stayed there and did a 4-year degree in agricultural studies, and then a master's degree in animal science, and had a great several years there in Ames, Iowa. Stayed pretty busy during college and was involved in some different clubs and organizations. Alpha Gamma Rho fraternity. Still have a bunch of very good friends I made there through that. The Block and Bridle Club, the livestock judging team, probably are the biggest things that come to mind. And just have a lot of great memories from my time in Ames, Iowa. Another thing that I'll mention is that's been a huge part of my life that I continue to be actively involved in is raising show pigs. My brother and I started out together back in our days at Iowa State and then kept things going for a while. Currently, we each have our own herds and have separated it, but we had a lot of success. In 2010, we had the grand champion gilt and boar at the National Barrow Show. They were litter mates, which is something, a day I'll never forget. And then another big one we had in 2012 was the grand champion barrow at the Oklahoma Youth Expo.
So very well versed in production and the show pig side of things.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, it's been a big part of my life.
Yeah, so I grew up here in Oakford, Illinois on our family farm. It was a diversified row crop and commercial pig farm, and we had some, my dad had some cows as well. We're actually sitting here at the farm right now. We live in the house where I grew up, and I was surrounded by all my little cousins and siblings as a child, and was really raised in that. And I feel like it was a special, unique opportunity for me as a kid. And actually, I graduated from high school in 2009, and that was the time that was, anybody who was in the pig industry at that time will remember that as a kind of stressful time in the pig industry financially. But I knew that I wanted to find a career where I could come back home eventually. And so I went to Texas A&M University, and I majored in animal science, and I wanted to be a vet. Now, for vet school, I kind of decided A&M was a little too far from home. So I was looking for a vet school that was closer to home. And that's when I went to Iowa State, and I got my DVM and my MBA while I was there too.
Now you've come full circle back on the family farm, and you met this fine gentleman, Kyle, and you met him at the Maschhoffs. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Throughout undergrad, my uncle Jim Brower had been recruiting me to help at the Beardstown research site for the Maschhoffs. And so I kind of knew everybody in that department, or at least knew of them. And after I graduated, I went down to Carlisle, Illinois to do a official summer internship in the R&D department. And we started running into each other down in Carlisle, and one of the first times that I remember, we were at the office for a meeting, and I saw Kyle, and he was wearing these really dorky boots, and he had his pants tucked in, and he was wearing this phone clip on his belt, and he had his phone hooked there, and I was thinking, he must be single, because if he had a girlfriend, she wouldn't let him dress like that. Um, so that was one of the first things that I remember about our interactions. And then the first time that I went to his genetics test center down south of Carlisle, he was doing some tricks and juggling some paint cans. I think he was trying to impress me, and I was pretty impressed. So, yeah.
We had some pretty long research days, and anybody that would have worked in that group knew that it was summertime, it was hot, and we had a lot of things that we needed to get done. And you can either go to the office and pout and complain, or you can get some water and get out there and get it done. So we chose to try to keep things on the more positive side.
That's the thing that really impressed me about Kyle, was he just had a really positive outlook, and he was, had a can-do attitude, and he had a plan, and we were going to do this, and we were going to be happy about it, and just genuinely really getting after it and having a good attitude and wanting to learn more through the research for the benefit of the company. And that's just somebody that the type of person that you want to be around.
So despite the overalls, that you don't have them anymore, do you, Kyle?
I stopped wearing my phone on my belt, actually. Yeah.
And what was it about Rachel that got your attention?
I'd noticed her earlier in the summer, and then picked up on a few little cues that maybe she might be interested or wanted me to probably approach her and ask her out. And so I decided to go ahead with it and step up to the plate. She said yes. We went fishing on our first date, pretty casual, out at a county park, caught a few bluegills, and then I didn't act too interested after that first date, because I wanted her to kind of wonder a little bit. And so eventually I think we went out and had dinner at a local bar and grill called the Blue Room. That would have been date number 2.
He knew I liked a challenge, I guess. Didn't want to make it too easy.
Well, it seemed to work out, and then somehow, Rachel, you got Kyle to follow you back to Iowa.
Yeah. So not long after we started dating, we were out on a date, and it might have been at the Blue Room, and Kyle mentioned, the Maschhoffs are expanding more into Iowa, and Ben is asking if I would want to go move out there and help. And so that was kind of my first clue that he might be willing to come out to Iowa with me. And really, I mean, Kyle's from Iowa, and he'd spent quite a bit of time in Ames, and he actually still had a house that he was renting out in Iowa. So it's not like it was that hard to convince him.
Right. So eventually I did get a transfer and moved to the Iowa Falls area, moved away from the gilt multiplication and research type stuff I was doing in Illinois, and went to Iowa and started in on more production in the central Iowa area there. And yeah, Rachel eventually rented out the house with some of her classmates and helped with that. So it was a neat story. I guess I thought I might never leave again. I had returned back to my home state at that point.
And I understand you weren't the only couple to come out of the Maschhoffs.
It's true. We have some great friends who met each other at the Maschhoffs as well, and stayed together and ended up getting married. So it was a very fun place to be. There were a lot of young people, and obviously some people ended up finding their spouse there as well.
And then you went to some weddings from people that met there too.
I mean, we were at the Maschhoffs at a time whenever there were a lot of young people, especially in our department, and a lot of young single people that really were working hard and devoted to their careers, right? And so that was pretty neat. And you know, couples that we've either been in their weddings or they've been in our weddings, and so pretty meaningful relationships that we've benefited from, that are special to us.
What about
in our
after
lives.
vet school?
Yeah, so about a little bit I think it was a year before I graduated, Kyle had the opportunity to come back to my hometown and be a production manager at Applewood Farms. And so, you know, we knew that we were going to end up back in my home area. And so he took that opportunity whenever Dr. Wilt offered it to him. And then when I graduated, I came back to the area as well. I was working for a large swine veterinary clinic for about 3 years after vet school. And now I'm working as an independent swine veterinarian, and I work closely with Dr. Alan Wilt out of Cass Vet Services as well. So here we are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's when you knew it had to be serious, is when I moved back to where her parents are from by myself.
That's the clincher.
Yeah. So yeah, and it would have been the fall of 18. That's when I started at Applewood Farms. And then, like she said, about a year later, she completed vet school.
So what's a typical day look like at Applewood, Kyle, and then you next, Rachel?
Well, a day that's typical would probably be all of the employees coming through at about 5:45 a.m. at the central office and clocking in, doing a lot of fast and furious communication at that time. And, you know, people getting in a company car, actually. So leaving all of their personal vehicle at a central location, jumping in a company car and heading out to the farm where they're going to work that day. That's kind of the start of my day. It's a really fast-paced thing. They're figuring out on my behalf, you know, what are the problems going on, and is there somewhere I need to go and check out today. If there's no fires burning, so to speak, I'm probably going to focus on our genetic work that I'll get into a little bit later in the call here.
Yeah, so a typical day for me, and I think any swine vet that you ask that question to is probably going to chuckle, because there's no typical day. You need to have a schedule and a routine, and you got to kind of stick to that routine. But I mean, I'm pretty flexible by nature, and so, you know, as a swine vet, you have to be pretty open to going where you're needed and taking calls that are emergent and so forth. And so, but I mean, typically if I'm going to a sow farm, for example, you know, the employees will show up at 5:45 or 6 o'clock, as Kyle says. And so then I'll try to show up at 7 o'clock or a little after, and then I try to always meet with the stakeholders. And, you know, first that's the owner and the manager. And we kind of review, you know, what's going on at the farm, the problems we're seeing at the farm, the problems that we're seeing downstream, in the downstream flow in the wean pigs, and whatever our production records are telling us. And then we'll go through farrowing, and again, with the stakeholders, I think it's really important to have the manager and the farrowing manager walking through farrowing with me, and looking and just observing and talking to the people as you walk through, and asking questions, and then on to breeding and gestation, and they're taking the breeding and gestation manager through with you. And it's not something that you can rush. You've got to take your time and observe and ask questions, and you know, be a part of the process if necessary. And then, you know, by the time we get through the farm, it's usually early afternoon, and so we'll chat things over back at the office, and then I'll get in my truck and take my diagnostic samples to the closest UPS drop point, and then I'll get on the road and get on the phone and usually make phone calls the rest of the way home. And by the time I'm home, we have 2 little girls, and so, I'm usually picking up the girls from my parents, and then getting home, and then usually about 7 o'clock at night, getting on the Iowa State Diagnostic Lab portal and looking up all my results that came in from the day and sending those results off to producers, and then finishing off my evening and getting the kids in bed and finishing up a few things, and then that's about it.
Now back
Sounds
to
busy
you.
me.
Yeah, well, like 7 o'clock at night. I don't know if you sleep at all, but now back to your thing, Kyle. We talked, it's kind of on the genetic side. What's your perspective on finding yourself in the middle between research and practical application?
Yeah, it's an interesting place to be, Jim. And it's an opportunity, I guess, to actually get things implemented. If you're on the decision maker side, in a meeting rooms and talking about new ideas and technologies, it's all very exciting, and I've participated in a lot of that as well. But then you have to get it done, and so that's the boots on the ground out in the barns with the pigs. And the people there aren't as interested or not as excited about new ideas and technologies and new processes, things they need to change. They really don't like change, in my experience. And so to get these things implemented properly and executed, and not only just for the first few weeks, but if it's something that you want to have lasting change, it's all about follow-up. So that's kind of what I've picked up on in my experience working in some different roles. It is possible, but you need to understand everybody that's involved. With regard to production, the people that you're working with most of the time don't love the business as much as you do. And so understanding that for them, it's more of a job. And so we need to find ways to make it a fun job, make it something they look forward to coming back to every day.
It's a good way to look at it.
I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying about how, positive and passionate Kyle is about, just learning more and, doing research to learn more, to do better processes, to raise better pigs, right? And so you need somebody who's really passionate about that, because I think that people pick up on that. And it's something that it's an ingredient to success, I think, everywhere.
Yeah, and empowering the staff and the employees to all work together to achieve a common goal.
There you go.
Now, tell me a little more about Applewood, Kyle.
Applewood Farms is a breed-to-wean sow operation that runs on the batch system. So we're able to have specialized labor. We're able to, have teams that only focus on their area every week. And I think a lot of people are actually drawn to that. And so we're a little more efficient with our overall labor force. We have a farrowing team, a breeding team, and also a pressure washing and sanitation team that helps with the wean. Applewood Farms uses internal multiplication, which means we develop our own replacement gilts. That's been something I was really involved in with regard to changing over our purebred lines. We took a landrace and actually changed over all the way to a Yorkshire. So we started out with F1 parents, so half and half, went out and selected them, created the next generation, which was 3/4 bloods. And then we moved to 7/8 and then 15/16. With all that, at the same time, we developed pedigrees behind our breeding stock. So we now have the ability to use selection indexes, which gives us a little more control over where we're headed. We don't know the results of this whole project yet necessarily, but we now have established the populations and kind of looking forward to where it goes from here. Something that I did with the project also was I was really critical on the feet and leg structure of the gilts that I selected. I think I made an impact. I did as well as I could. The fact that I'm not the genetics company myself is my limiting factor, right? I can only do as best I can with what I'm provided with. So
This is pretty good.
we're going to see where this goes. It was quite the project to try to keep everybody excited about it, and tagging accurately and all that stuff that's more detailed. But yeah, it's been interesting. Applewood Farms, it's older facilities, as Rachel may have talked about. Her grandparents and family actually built all this back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so we have a pretty strong maintenance and repairs group that has done a lot with remodeling and saving some of these older facilities. They're doing very good work with all that.
So does it mean a lot to you, Rachel, to have the family farm back with full circle?
It's pretty neat, Jim, and it's really about the people, right? And so I have a lot of really special memories that I made as a family together because the farm enabled us to do that, right? So I grew up close with all my aunts and uncles and cousins and so forth, and now to be able to move back home. And one of my cousins just moved back, and she purchased my grandparents' house, and her and her husband are remodeling it. And that's the kind of thing that's pretty special. And my daughter loves spending time with my cousin Sarah, and yeah, it's pretty special.
So we got a funny story about pig gifts. You guys started receiving gifts from people, different trinkets, of things they'd find at Cracker Barrel, and now it's become kind of a thing that you guys are collecting this stuff.
Yeah, Jim, and we have a lot of fun with this. Okay, so one of the first things that we received, this started happening just sporadically, and then it started happening pretty regularly, especially after we got married. I think that people, when they go shopping, if they see a pig item, they just automatically think, they think of us, and then they think Rachel and Kyle would love this, and they would love to display it in their home. So yeah, one of the first things that we got was this porcelain pig. It's a flying pig. It's something that we keep in our guest room. We also have this PIC clock, and we have a lot of wall hangings from genetics companies showing which genetics are the best and what the ideal animal looked like throughout the years. We have these salt and pepper shakers that we received. And we also actually have 3 different pairs of crocheted pig baby shoes. And I'll show them to you here. We have these, which are pretty cute. And then we have these. And then I think these are my favorites. Be these little crocheted pigs with the eyes and the tails. So it's something that we really enjoy.
Is all
That's
this in
only a
this?
sampling. We have more.
Is it like in one room, Kyle, or spread throughout?
It's everywhere in the house. We have Reagan, who's almost 5, and we have Kendra, who's 6 months old. So it's all over the place.
So what about having a museum or?
I don't know. I think we have enough pots cooking at the present time that we may not need to take on another venture, but who knows what the future could hold, I guess.
We actually have, I can see it through the window. We have what we think is the oldest swine confinement building in the US that my grandpa built. It's been demolished, but at Applewood, but that could be a potential spot, I think, for a museum.
except the biosecurity maybe.
Yeah, too many people would want to come through. Yeah.
So we got one more question. Is there a defining moment on the farm, whether it's adversity, success, or promise, that you can share with us?
I'm going to give you an example for that one. For me, it is when somebody decides to step up and put on the company hat and take on more responsibility and take on a leadership role here at the farm. We just need more and more people that are willing to do that. And anytime we can get one, I celebrate it and I pat those people on the back every chance I get, because that is our limiting factor as far as labor goes and operations.
From a consulting swine vet perspective, it's very much along the same lines, I think, you know, and it goes back to the questions I was asking myself as a kid, which is, you know, what does it take to be successful, and what does success mean? And then what does it take to be sustainable? And that's something that, as you know, I think about as I go at, you know, for the past 10 years, I've been asking myself this question. Okay, what is it going to take for us to be successful and to be sustainable? And, you know, whenever I go onto one of my producers' farms, you know, I think we ask ourselves that question, and what is it going to take to be successful? And when the producer and the employees in the farm we're able to figure that out, what's it going to take to be successful? And then we all start working towards that goal together. That is really rewarding for me, to see us turn a corner and to really dig in and start working towards that goal.
Well, Rachel and Kyle Schulte, thank you for joining us today on the program.
Thanks, Jim. This was good.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jim.